think there's an opportunity there for, work-life balance, which has become quite a big thing, I think.
G'day and welcome to the Farms Advice podcast with your host, Jack Creswell. Whether you farm it, service it, or just love it, this podcast is for you. We'll bring you the techniques and technologies you can implement into your day straight from the leaders and innovators themselves. Spread the Farms Advice so that we can reach more farmers right across Australia. Follow us on all of your socials at Farms Advice, and let's get into this episode. Welcome to the beginning of this episode, but also the end of Beyond the Tax Return for 2022. Beyond the Tax Return is brought to you from the team at Byfield Business Advisors, based over in WA, but they've got a wealth of knowledge. As you may have tuned in, listened in, right across the year, this year, and also last year, we've had some pretty special topics go across, from is it worth changing the land ownership before you die with Justina Balowski, how to start your succession plan with Scott Smith, the federal budget from last year, and we'll have that touching on today. From children returning back to the farm with Brant Jansen, and how that worked out in last year's Harvest Series. We've had 15 amazing topics. They've all been competing for the most sort of listens in the office, but this content is probably the biggest one out there, and these are great questions that we're sort of answering and putting towards in the farmers' ears, so they have some options to go away and talk to their own professionals in their own sort of circle. But this is the last episode for Beyond the Tax Return. Just thought we would let you know and tune in, and we'll be touching on the budget for this one. So tune in. Hope you got something out of Beyond the Tax Return for this year, and have a good Christmas from the Byfields team. Before we get started, just to let you know, this episode is intended to be general information only, as the host and the guest do not know your personal circumstances, so please go and talk to your own accountant or the team at Byfields to get the right information for your scenario. Let's get into this episode. Lee, welcome back to the Farms Advice podcast. Great to have you back on and coming into 2023, big sort of budget season. Great to have you on nonetheless, and your contribution throughout the Byfield series has been phenomenal last year coming onto the podcast. But what are we going to be doing today? And welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me. Today we're going to be talking about the federal budget, so the Labor budget, which came out on the 25th of October. So just talking about what that might mean for farmers.
Beautiful. So let's get cracking into the budget and what it means, especially coming from the Labor change of governments as well, and how that can transcend into farmers. So was the budget actually an exciting one for us farmers currently?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, from an accounting and tax point of view, affecting businesses, which very much includes farmers, we're probably left with more questions than answers. But on the surface, when you actually look at, a bit of their funding and where they're looking to spend some money, I mean, it looks like that might be a positive for the regional areas. Although I'm very far from being an expert as to how they actually spend that money, and I guess the process and if that is enough money. But on the surface, it looks quite positive for the regions.
And how quickly is this budget going to come across, do you think? Is it going to come a bit to start seeing impact within the regional communities? Or we're going to see it pretty much as a get-go come in 23?
Yeah, they seem to be talking about delaying some of that spending till 2024. So I don't think it's going to be an immediate impact. I mean, some of the things they're talking about spending on is housing and immigration and trying to bring more people into the regions, which I think is a positive. But as we've seen across the board with housing, that's a real issue to get tradies and also materials. So the impact it feels is going to be a slow impact in terms of the benefits there, I think.
Yeah, it can't be too drastic, can it? You're not going to get tradies or farmers out into the regions overnight, just like in ag. Nothing happens overnight. But what sort of announcements were made in terms of funding and where it's going to be sort of directed? There's a fair few sort of topics some farmers hope to have ticked the box off. Some of these ticked off through connectivity. It's probably one of the big ones, black spots. What sort of things were being announced?
So they are talking about spending some money on better service and internet in the regional areas. So I think that's always a positive. And yeah, hopefully they're able to do that and be successful. Talking about offering some energy efficient grants. So for small to medium businesses to improve efficiency, reduce emissions and improve the management of power on demand. So it'd be quite interesting to see how they actually roll that out and, what the criteria is to be eligible for those grants. They're also talking about some growing region programs to assist local groups and organisations. So again, we don't have a lot of detail on that at the moment, but hoping that that's sort of helping, I guess, to with the communities and with their projects. And just talking about some infrastructure spending, and probably one of the major ones is funding to help growing risks of pests and diseases. So, looking at, I guess, the different risk there for farmers and hoping to mitigate that where possible.
Yeah, they're pretty rife currently, especially with livestock and broadacre cropping, pretty susceptible to the disease level as well. And I think that spending has come across pretty well for farmers off the back of that in through and protecting us from the border, but also outside of the border. Pretty important for it. So
yeah, the risk is so huge, isn't it? The impact that can have. So I think that's really important, and probably to increase the education around that as well.
yeah, a bit of a long burner there, but hopefully, and so far, especially for FMD, foot and mouth disease, it's worked quite well. What's going on currently, the way we've sort of reacted. Everyone sort of thought it was a bit slow coming in, and I think they've actually put some good barriers up there for it. But talking into how farmers can take advantage of the family-friendly budget that's been put in place and the big announcement of extending paid parental leave, how does this play in for farmers?
Yeah, I think this one's quite a huge one. So the paid parental leave is currently available to people who are not working. So as soon as you're out of the workforce, you can actually receive paid parental leave as like a supplement for your income, given that you're not working. And we've actually seen our clients take advantage of the current paid parental leave, which is based on currently a reduced amount of weeks. So they're talking about increasing that to 26 weeks, and currently it's 18. So what we've seen clients do in the past is actually pay themselves wages through the business, especially people that are trading as trust or companies, and that will therefore make them eligible to receive paid parental leave. So I think sometimes there's this sort of thought that people are receiving drawings, they're not actually employees, that they're not eligible for paid parental leave, but that's not actually true. So we find that paying wages is the simplest way to be eligible, but if you don't actually pay wages, you can actually still apply, but I have done that in the past and it is quite difficult. So I'd strongly recommend anyone who's actually looking to potentially have a child to be paid a wage through their business to make them eligible. And so currently that's worth $14,000. Which is quite a significant amount of money, but they're talking about increasing that to be 26 weeks, which is actually going to be worth $21,000. So that's a government paid amount. They're also talking about expanding it so a mum and dad can actually receive it at the same time. So previously it was either one or the other that was eligible for that paid parental leave. So I guess that's quite exciting to think that you could have, a mum and dad taking 13 weeks each at the same time to spend time with their family. And again, I think there's an opportunity there for farmers to make sure they're set up to receive that benefit if and when the time comes. I guess the flip side is for employers that now they're going to have to be very aware that there is a potential that more people will be taking paid parental leave than what they have done in the past, given that mum and dad will both be eligible. If you have a mum working on the farm and she might have previously come back, after a short period of time back into the workforce, she now may extend that leave. So that might create some issues, I think, for businesses that have employees going forward.
Yeah, I think so. And then might be a bit of a decision change coming from the employer anyway. But that parental leave is a bit of a positive for young parents, especially for those looking to be retained in regional areas, I'd imagine, right across Australia.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's an opportunity there for, the work-life balance, which has become quite a big thing, I think, post-COVID. Well, not that we're post it, but Everyone's changing maybe their lifestyle ideas a little bit there. So I think it's a positive, but it will have to be very carefully managed.
Absolutely. What about for skilled migrants or even migrants, incentivizing backpackers to come over for these sort of regional and rural programs to get them in our peak season? So harvest is coming up. Some have already started, some are a bit delayed on the East Coast, especially. What's happening in this area?
Well, they are talking about, actually spending some more money, so some more funding in regards to the migration and actually targeting regional areas there. I mean, I don't think we're going to see that impact for this harvest coming, given that we already have some people that have already started here. But I think all in all, they're definitely trying to expand the numbers of people they are coming in to help fill those voids, but as I'm sure on the East Coast, you're seeing on the West Coast, housing's become a real issue in terms of people actually having somewhere to live to be able to work.
Yeah, there's definitely a fair few topics to be juggling at the moment. Recession, we won't name the R word too many times throughout the podcast, but just some things to think about anyway. So the proposed tax cuts were not in the budget, but they're set to come in on the 1st of July, 2024. What are these?
Yeah. So these were the Liberal tax cuts. So these were phase 3 of the tax cuts, which are set to come in on the 1st July 2024, which we think is a huge positive for anyone really earning between 45,000 and 200,000 will actually pay less tax under these rates. There was a lot of talk pre-budget that Labor wouldn't actually go ahead with these tax cuts and that it would be in the budget that they would be getting rid of them, but it actually wasn't covered at all. So from our point of view, we're thinking, well, does that mean they will go ahead as of July 2024 or not? We're obviously still, a fair way away from July 2024. So Labor do still have that opportunity to decide not to go ahead with them or not. But I guess we can, at the moment, just see that as good news that hopefully the tax cuts will take place.
Beautiful. And we had the episode before talking about temporary full expensing, and it got quite good reception anyway, but it wasn't covered in the budget. What does this mean?
No, so I feel like all year I've been saying to everyone, we'll find out in the budget what's going to happen with the temporary full expensing, and we'll be in contact, we'll send a newsletter, we'll let you know. But they didn't actually cover temporary full expensing at all in the budget. And this one's probably a bit more pressing, I think, than the tax rate changes, because as of the 1st of July 2023, which isn't that long away now, we don't actually know what the rules are. So I guess at the moment we'll just assume that they will go back to the old rules, which means really anything that's $1,000 or over will be depreciated over time. And that, as Jared was covering, we've potentially got some tax issues of people that claim the temporary full expensing on their asset purchases and what's going to happen when they sell or trade those items. This is probably really frustrating that we don't know the answer to this, because people are trying to plan now, especially with trying to actually get any gear actually in is going to be difficult by 30 June 2023. But also just, we're trying to do a bit of tax planning and a bit of work around that. And it's really difficult to really sort of factor that in past 30 June 2023. So that was disappointing. I think that wasn't in there. And really our hope is that the next budget will come out in May 2023. We really just hope we don't have to wait till May to know what's actually going to happen with temporary full expensing, and hoping something will be announced, relatively soon.
Would that, before the end of the year, an announcement is likely, or is it not too much leading into Christmas?
We don't know. So, we don't have really any guidance on when that will happen. You speak to different people and they think we'll have to wait till May, and then others say that surely they'll have to announce something sooner. But probably what we've learnt, Jack, in the accounting world is that, quite often we're dealing with legislation that's actually backdated. So we just come to not expect anything, I think, and just, we just have to go with it.
Yeah, I think it's quite pivotal, the sort of decisions that get made. I sort of tended the podcast to stick away from politics, but it actually drives a lot of what we do as farmers, and sort of that guidance around what we can do and how you sort of interpret that as accountants that buy fields right across Australia. We've sort of gathered our own list of what we're looking for guidance for coming into the future. But what else was left off the budget for yourselves there?
Yeah, so some other pretty major accounting and tax issues as well. So they've been talking about changes to Division 7A, which is applicable for people that have companies and make loans within companies. So
Yep.
they're talking about changes to come in there, which have been discussed since 2017, and we're still no clearer since 2017 as to what those new rules might look like. And that would have, potential major impact on clients that have a company in their structure or are trading as a company. So once again, we're sort of just left, going with what we know, and we can't really make any assumptions on planning for the future because we're just not really sure. The other one was there is talk about the capital gains tax rollovers becoming more simplified. So the capital gains tax rollovers are very complex and very, very hard to administer, I think, and hard to interpret. So I think there is talk that they're going to actually, spend some time to simplify those. But again, that wasn't mentioned in the budget at all either. I mean, that's probably not changing our day to day because we know what the current rules are. But yeah, having some changes there might make more people eligible, or might just make it a little bit easier to apply. The other major one is 100A. So talking about the trusts and any trust allocations that are made within family groups and how they're actually viewed from the tax office. So that's a pretty major topic, but we are sort of told that we should have some guidance on that before Christmas. And we probably weren't really expecting that to be in the budget because they are waiting on a legal case, but it probably would have been nice to have something in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were biofuels? What were you keen to actually have in the budget just to wrap this up? And what are you keen to move on, and hopefully we can press these a little bit later?
Yeah, I mean, from our point of view, as you mentioned, we like to be pre-planning for our clients. So we like to know what the legislation is to be able to do some really good work there for our clients. And I think it's really difficult to do that when we don't actually know what the legislation is. So we were really hoping that there would be, information on the temporary full expensing, so we could advise clients with asset purchases and sales and what that might look like. And I think the Division 7A one, it feels like we've been waiting long enough to get some guidance on that since 2017. So they're probably the key items we were hoping for. And obviously we're always happy if there's some more spending in the regions to advantage our clients and us that live in the regions as well.
Yes, certainly. And over in WA, I hear that you're in a surplus, so WA is not doing too bad as well.
Yeah, no, we're doing, I think quite well. I think the mining helps a lot with that. But yeah, obviously we're in the regions we're struggling with the staffing and supplies, and like the rest of Australia and probably the world is as well.
Absolutely. And looking back at our episode that we did last year about what the budget meant for farmers, it was very sort of neutral, like what this budget has given us, not too much to lead on with, and you're still sort of chasing some answers on some questions for farmers so we can start planning ahead. For farmers, I feel as if the last few years been pretty good timing for us to get our stuff together, start planning, start forward planning anyway, that 12 months ahead, and then even looking into 72 months ahead, 3 years, and then 5 years or whatever, and how that can come for yourself. What advantages can farmers look towards in the next couple of years, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, these potential tax cuts that they're talking about on the 1st of July 2024, I think will have quite a large impact on, on a lot of people really Australia-wide, not just farmers. I think, there's a huge advantage there. So that's probably quite exciting. And I guess the budget measures in terms of that spending in the regions, if that's effective, I think that's also really, really positive.
Absolutely. So, Lee, what would be your number one piece of farms advice you'd like the listener to take away, the farmer on the other end of this audio, to take away from this episode, from the budget, and sort of get their plans together for something so they can actually start to move the dial a little bit themselves and not sort of hold on to legislation, waiting for that guidance each time?
Yeah, well, I think the world we live in at the moment, unfortunately, we're probably just not going to get given a lot of information in advance, and like I said, as accountants, we're probably getting used to that. But I think you can really just plan given the information that you have. So you need to learn to do that and be flexible. So if things change, you need to, be able to adjust. But we always say to clients, you plan on what the information is. So you can't really necessarily budget for what plant or machinery you're going to buy in 5 years' time anyway. So you can have a rough guide, but we just need to, I think, go with what we know. And if it changes, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And we just be flexible.
Absolutely. So quick little wrap up there for yourself and the take home message for farmers from the budget. What would that be?
I think yeah, the family friendly budget is what it was labelled at, and that's probably what it comes down to. I think that probably one of the major things in the budget was the paid parental leave. So I think for those thinking about starting a family, make sure you take advantage of that. That's a huge benefit, and really, I guess some of these other legislation things we just need to watch and see what happens.
Yeah, well, I think it might go a long way in helping these younger families come back to the farm as well, because lately it's been so attractive for younger people to come back, me as well, to the farm and actually work on the family farm or within the region anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great helping hand, and like I said, the work-life balance is becoming quite huge. So hopefully can help with that as well.
Absolutely. So for Byfields on the website, is there a place we can go to see more about what the budget meant for farmers? Any resources that we can lean on?
Yeah, so we recently sent out a newsletter outlining the budget and what that means, and that will be on our website if anybody wants to have a look at that, or if they contact Byfields, we can email them a copy.
Amazing. And how can we get in touch with yourself, Lee, and the team there at Byfields? What's the best way?
So I'm based in the Narrogin office, so if anyone's in the region and they want to call in, that's fine. But obviously we're on the website, LinkedIn, Facebook, and telephone as well.
Beautiful. And you'll be able to catch it all in the show notes. And I've actually been made aware that this is our last Beyond the Tax Return episode for 2022. Pretty scary.
Yeah, I think the year's almost done, isn't it?
It wound up really quick. Well, Lee, thank you so much for coming on, showing your time to see what the budget meant, the Labor budget meant for Australian farmers out there. I think there's a little bit in this episode that farmers can take away from that. Maybe for the younger families out there, parental leave might be a good thing for them to have a think about.
Thanks, Jack. And thanks for having us on the podcast. We've really enjoyed the year. I know the guys got really excited, and I think our clients are listening too. So, and obviously in the communities, which we enjoy.
Amazing. I'll have to update the figures there for Shane to give you who's got the most listens within the office.
Have to blackmail some people.
This Farms Advice episode does not stop here. Come and join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, and even join our Facebook group. Go to farmsadvice.com.au for more on this episode and spread the hashtag FarmsAdvice to your mates. If you can leave a review on Apple or Spotify, that will let other farmers find us too. But until then, see you next Tuesday. In the spirit of reconciliation, the Farms Advice podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people today.